Welcome to the RaceGuru Thunder Hour, brought to you always by FantasyGuru.com and the Elite Plus Network, co-hosted by yours truly, Rich Miletto. You can find me on Twitter, but don't follow me on Twitter at FantasyBosco. As always, the man, the myth, the legend is here. Sean Engel, you can find on X at SeanE247. Remember, that's Sean, S-E-A-N. And he's back with us again this week. We'll keep him around as long as he'll have us. Mark Hogan, you can find on X at DFS_Marlin. Before we get too far into it, I want to give a shout out to Sean here. Sean kind of kicked ass on bets this week. And hey, I know he admitted to me it's an ebb and flow thing. We ride the hot waves and hot streaks while we can, but he's due a shout out, man. I mean, to nail every head-to-head pick he had and the parlay. We printed money this week, Sean, and most of it was off your back, buddy. Congratulations. Well done, sir.
Thank you. It's great to be here, and it's great in order to nail all of these bets right here as it is. You know what? Let me see if I could quickly get the screenshot of the parlay in question here. Because it really was quite interesting. It was a bunch of head-to-head bets. I was like, all right, I like all these drivers here in order to beat these other ones amidst the circumstances. Yeah, here we go. Buescher versus Keselowski, Byron versus Reddick, Gibbs versus Bowman, and then Larson versus Elliott, plus 918 total odds for the parlay. All four legs hit. Great day right there.
I tell you what, I was sweating the Alex Bowman one, man, because for a minute there, Alex Bowman looked like he was on his way to an easy top 10, and Gibbs continued to battle the battles he's had. So, woo! Hey, there is no good bet that's not a sweat, right? As Mark has said, if you're 100% confident with your DFS lineup, it's probably wrong. You should at least be a little uneasy with one or two drivers. So, and it's the same way with the bets. It never fails. When you do those parlays, I swear, it's the oddball pick, the last pick that you have to worry about the least. I mean, that top 10 parlay 2 weeks ago, Sean, Byron was the last guy in for me. Byron was the guy that finished the best of all three of them. So, you know, you got to be willing to have a sweat. Scared money don't win money. That's just the way it is. So, and a shout out to FantasyGuru.com. Please, if you haven't yet, go to FantasyGuru.com. Click up in the top right-hand corner, hit subscribe, check out all the packages we got. But if you like the RaceGuru Thunder Hour and you want more of our racing content or all of our racing content, good news. For $79.99 for 12 months, you get all of that, plus all the hockey, all the basketball, all the MMA, all the golf, all the esports, horse racing. Yes, Slappy White, got to give a shout out to Slappy, horse racing. The only thing you don't get is NFL and Major League Baseball. So come on over, check it out. Feel free to look around. If you're not seeing something that works for you or what you want, email us at support@fantasyguru.com. Tell them what you're looking for. Tell them, your budget, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish. They will take care of you. I promise you that. So I forgot. And the Major League Baseball draft guide is available. The Ray Flowers, the Oracle himself, I'm pretty sure he's been working on that draft guide since November. I'm almost positive. Like the moment baseball season ends, he starts. So go over there, check out the MLB draft guide. I know Patio Joe's throwing some stuff on the website for baseball, or at least he did last year. I'm expecting the same this year. He always has a little bit of different insight since he does some refereeing as part of his income throughout the year. So Patio Joe's always one interesting one to reach out to in that regard. Well, gentlemen, we had our first short track of the season. I don't know if it's much of a short track, but hey, that's what we call it. We also was our first race with the option tire. I don't know how many more we're going to have. That was definitely a topic of discussion. Some interesting, different, weird news. Catherine Legg had everybody talking about the provisional. Again, NASCAR actually made changes to that today. Nothing significant, but a lot of jimmer jatter going on. And honestly, for the most part, though, it was a pretty solid race. I do think that option tire brought a whole nother element to the race, who made it a lot less dry of a Phoenix race than what we typically see. Would you gentlemen agree?
Yeah, I do think so. You know how basically on this show last week, I was like, oh, Phoenix racing sucks. Sucks butt. Well, you know what? I'll admit it. The option tire made me actually say that this race was actually kind of okay.
Go ahead,
I think
Mark.
it adds a whole level of strategy, a whole second layer that, as a fan like myself, my wife was watching with me. I'm explaining it to her. She's enjoying it. Just the thought process that each of these teams are going through, when they're going to switch, when they're going to, how long they're going to stay out there, how much they're going to risk it at certain points of the race, why they're going to risk it, because one's in a position to win where others in a position where they're just trying to collect as many points as possible. So there's a lot of different layers to it that you can, once you start peeling the onion on, really enjoy, even as a casual fan.
I historically have found the tire thing gimmicky. It's one thing I don't really care for that F1 has done, that IndyCar has done. I get the strategy angle of it, but I've always enjoyed the strategy of guessing on pit stops and taking chances with the yellow flags. That said, I will gladly sign off on these two tested tires if we get rid of stage breaks. I absolutely despise. I know Joey Logano is adamant it adds strategy. I completely disagree. It adds different types of strategy, but as far as adding strategy, knowing when the cautions fall, I think is absolutely detrimental to watching a race happen organically. I truly believe that. And it just really bothers me because I think you're right. We had comers and goers. Joey had to go early to the option tire. We know, and that's the other thing I don't really like about it. We know we're going to get late restarts. Everyone's got to hold on to a set of options at the end. If you don't, you're going to get smoked, right? Like that. That's my one beef with it. We're able to, shouldn't say predict these late race cautions, but if, like Marcus said, if we could bet on Rex or know what they were, I would love to make a bet of 25 laps to go, a caution takes place. I don't know what the odds would be. I've never done the math on it, but I would love to take that bet, for example. So
I think they post bets for number of cautions.
Have they? I haven't seen
them.
They used to. I know they used to, but yeah, I've never seen them, as far as the laps go. I'm just saying we kind of know that's going to happen. So I feel like that limits some of the strategy. But look, Ryan Preece going, 33rd to 3rd? That doesn't happen if we don't have this tire, right? Joey Logano with a bonehead and that was a bone. He can be mad at NASCAR. Everyone wants NASCAR to have rules black and white. If we're black and white, Joey, you broke the rule, man. I think it's a stupid rule, but you did. And so he had to go to the option early. That completely changed, his outlook. SVG looked completely different on the option tire, and he spoke to that it felt completely different and he felt more in control. I kind of think TJ Majors and Dale Jr.'s stance on this is spot on. Let's go softer yet. Let's get rid of the primary. Let's go to this option tire. Let's go softer yet. And let's force these teams to manage the tires. That means you crew chiefs maybe can't be as aggressive. It means you drivers, maybe you can't drive it in as deep. But let's take care of the equipment. And call me crazy, Sean, but if we did that, imagine if instead of figuring out how long the fuel run was, you were trying to figure out how long the tire run was. Do we go through these games of saving fuel if it's all about saving the tire?
Me personally, I would be more for this move. More on the tire wear instead of the fuel wear. Let's go this direction. If you told me to pick one direction, this direction is more exciting to me.
Your thoughts, Mark?
I'm good with it. I mean, to me, I think I have to see it for it to really resonate. Just not having as much history and watching as you guys, but I would say I definitely, like, if I'm just thinking of it from a general perspective, I'd much rather see a guy blow a tire than see a guy run out of gas on the last lap. Like, I cannot tell you how heartbreaking that is when you have a bet on a guy or a DFS lineup that's looking perfect and you're on the last lap and he runs out of effing fuel and just falls all the way to the back at the end of the race. Like, that puts your lineup from 3rd place in a contest winning like thousands of dollars to losing money.
That was people that had Ryan Blaney in their lineups last year at Gateway.
Yeah.
Don't even go there. Or Brad Keselowski at Indy. But the thing that TJ and Junior talked about with the softer tire and wanting to go softer yet was Junior's like, look, with this softer tire, you can make things happen with this car. See, I hadn't thought about it in terms of when you're on these primaries, they're so hard that part of the reason they can't race door to door and overtake is they're just a hard tire. It's not enough grip. Well, if that's all it is, then I'm all for it. And don't get me wrong, Mark, you weren't around for the tire wars, and we don't want that type of stuff. But, and I don't mind fuel mileage coming into play once in a while. I hate the fact that it's an everything, everybody now. You know, it was one thing back in the day where you would see a team try to do a race on one less pit stop, right? That's a whole different strategy. So you're watching it play out, and they may be at the back, and all of a sudden they're at the front and they're holding off. Like, it's a whole different story that's being told. Now we go to Daytona, and everyone runs 50% because it's all about who can have a 5-second pit stop at the end of the race. Like, I'm all about the pit crews and all that, but man, let's put some more excitement and more control in the driver's hands, and let's see how it works out. I would love for crew chiefs and drivers have to consciously work on protecting equipment and being fast. That's when we really get to see some cool things play out. So I'm hopeful because they're not going back to Phoenix with 2 tires. They've already admitted that. Now, whether that means we go to the option tire only remains to be seen, but there's only going to be one set of tire when we go back to Phoenix for the championship. Please, baby Jesus, give us a soft tire that drivers gripe about. I miss the days when drivers gripe that the tires wouldn't hold up. I know Goodyear doesn't miss those days, but gosh darn it, I do.
Same. Let that be the norm. In fact, why stop at Phoenix? Make that for all the short tracks to go soft.
100%. I'm hopeful. I haven't heard what they announced for Martinsville, Sean, but I am hopeful at the very least we get the 2 sets. At the very least. I'd be all for a softer option tire, and boys, we see what we got. Because if there is a track you could get away with that as far as the tires and the fuel, like Martinsville's not a bad one. Passing is notoriously difficult. We constantly see someone take off the first half of the race. It would definitely bring a whole different dynamic than what we've seen at Martinsville the last 2 years.
Oh, yeah. Looking forward to hearing if there are any changes within the next few weeks, because Martinsville is going to be coming up before we know it anyway.
Because what we got Vegas this week, Miami next week, and then I think it's Martinsville, isn't it?
I believe you are correct about that. Yep. Vegas, Homestead, then Miami, Darlington, and then Bristol before we hit our first off and only off week of the season for Cup.
Oh, they're taking off for God again? Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice of them. Well, Mark, that used to be the same, Mark. NASCAR takes off for God and Mom. That was literally the for what, decades, Sean? That was the same. NASCAR only takes off for God and Mom because they took off for Easter and they took off for Mother's Day.
I'm good with it.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, we're not doing that anymore. But, I'd be all for it again, just saying.
We got half of that back.
Yeah,
we got God, but our mothers, I don't know.
Yeah, but poor moms, they're still going racing. Mark, if you've been around NASCAR long enough, you would be shocked at some of the saints throughout the years, some of the signs. And I mean, when the king of your sport goes, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying in NASCAR, that kind of tells you what you're dealing with.
It's true.
You got to appeal to your demographic, though. So,
well, I don't think they know what their demographic is, right? I think that's part of the problem. I mean, anyway. Any other thoughts to Phoenix, gentlemen? Open floor.
So I was just going to say, I do want to comment on the finishes of both of these races. We had Xfinity Series and we had Cup Series, and both of them ended under relatively close finishes there. Now, I know there's still controversy being talked about with the Xfinity one in particular between Almirola and Bowman right there, and Almirola basically walling Bowman right there. And then as far as the Cup Series goes, Bell and Hamlin got mighty close to the wall there. It just goes and proves to your point that drivers can make moves with the option tire. They were both on option tires at the end, and that almost got to the point where Larson almost stole it right from both of them. He was very close too.
Yep. I tend to disagree with Bowman. I get what he was saying. I hope he left me a lane there. but it's going for a win. Like, I struggle to believe that if the situations was reversed, that Bowman doesn't do the same thing. It wasn't like Almirola was trying to drive into him. He clearly overdrove it, tried to hold it, lost it, and got up into him. That's going to happen on the last turn of the last lap when it's that close. You know what I mean? Like,
definitely. You could even see it in the replay that he overdrove it there, clearly.
Right.
And then he was just so happy to win. He was like, I don't care if you ended up getting in the wall. I won the race anyway. Tell me.
Right. I mean, and that's why I said if the situation was reversed, I tend to agree with, I think it was either, trying to think of who was in the booth on the CW this week. Was it Harvick?
I think it was Harvick. It's been the same booth, and it is going to be the same booth all season. What Adam Alexander, Parker Kligerman, and
it was Parker.
Probably was Parker making the point there.
Yeah, I think Parker's point was he shouldn't have given up the inside lane there. And I think if Bowman goes back and watches, I think he'll see that he probably needed to do a little more defensive driving that last half a lap to, force Almirola to have the less desirable path instead of him just trying to hold his line and ride the momentum around. Whenever you can get away with running that high line and people not getting into you in the middle of a race as a general rule. When you're doing that at the end of the race, you're playing with fire, in my opinion. I understand if that's the fastest way around the track, that's what you got to be. But look, we've seen it in Cup, we've seen it in Xfinity, we've seen it at all levels at the end of the race when the high groove is what's coming in and someone does the slide job, they're sending it. A win's a win. It's a big deal, regardless of the series. It gets you in the playoffs. I mean, everybody's griped about what Austin Dillon did, and Almirola did nothing like that. Now, unfortunately, and here's the other thing, neither Bowman or Almirola are eligible for the playoffs anyway. So, you know what I mean? It was two guys going for the only thing either of them could really go for was a win. So.
Yeah, it was just a win. Or in Almirola's case, that 20 car was still going to go. No, not the 20. The 19 car there was going to go for the owner's championship there because they'd still be eligible for that, at least because that car itself is full-time. It just has different drivers rotating in it.
Right.
I got to say, I mean, when coming off the restart, when did the restart occur? It was 4 laps out or 5 laps out? Whenever that happened and he came around, he just shot right through the middle between, I think it was Allgaier and who was
the other guy up above? But it was a sweet move. I know I could, because the camera shot even showed you right down.
Oh yeah,
right at him. I mean, you saw him come straight at you, and like everybody part ways. And poor Justin Allgaier. I mean, talk about a guy that ran a dominant race.
Oh,
really was the car to beat all day.
And he moved right up there. I mean, he went right from 14 to top 5 pretty early on in the race. I mean, 130 laps led. That restart was heartbreaking for Allgaier. And Bowman, I don't know, it just like was an aerodynamic or something where he just took off, threaded the needle. I could have sworn he was going to wreck, but somehow he squeezed between the both of them and jumped ahead. Very shocking.
It was a hell of a restart. And to your point there, Mark, that just goes to show you this is why I struggle with the late race restarts. Everybody gets excited because we end up with excited finishes. But in the grand scheme of things, I was kind of disappointed in the Xfinity race. The Cup race was quite a bit better than I thought. The Xfinity race was quite a bit more meh than I thought. But that's all lost because everybody talks about the last 2 to 3 laps. And I just always find that interesting. Recency bias.
Yeah, and really, I could say this for both races. Both races were about as middling or okay as they can really get there. It's just they both happen to have exciting finishes at the end. But really, everything leading up to that was just kind of
Right.
Oh, man. I mean, I was looking real good until Briscoe and his car went, he went airborne for a split second there. It looked like the whole car was in the air at one point.
And that took out my little contrarian SVG, who honestly, I didn't need much from him. Like him running around there in the 20s was completely fine for our DFS purposes.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because he was going to get us the 6 or 7 Place differential points. He was going to finish somewhere in that vicinity. You could tell once they went to the option tire, he felt more comfortable there. Like things were working out. He was right there with Briscoe. Briscoe was a favorite for a top 10. He was minus 105 for a top 10, even starting in 30th. Like that. And where did it happen? On the freaking restart, because everybody, like, remember what we said last week? We're going to see crazy restarts with that dog leg and going 8-9 wide. And they hadn't even got to that point. The wreck started before they even got to the start-finish line. It was just stupid.
Very frustrating.
That was a real bummer. Watching the window shoot out of the car, watching him get airborne, like you said, Mark. Did you guys see the window shootout?
No, I didn't.
Oh,
see
I saw that. Yeah, that was.
Oh, you didn't
really
see that, Mark?
Nuts.
Not the windows, no.
Yeah, so the passenger side is typically plexiglass window, right? In different spots there. Well, they hit, and you saw the window just fly right out of the car.
Yeah. Man, that is crazy. I mean, it just sucked because so many guys got taken out in that wreck. And honestly, man, I had a great lineup. I had Byron, Chastain, Busch, Bowman, Dillon. I played Dillon from when we were talking about some of our value plays. He went from 21st to 12th. Yeah. And then Briscoe. And Briscoe was right up there, holding his spot. He was 45% owned in the contest that played him in. A little less ownership than I was expecting. I thought he was going to be a little low. Like 60, yeah, exactly. I was thinking 55, 60. But I mean, the ownership was pretty spread out. Byron was 54. Bowman was 58. Bowman 58 made sense. And then Chastain even at 34. But Busch was surprisingly low owned, and Dillon was obviously low owned. I feel like Busch, even on a track, we had the numbers, we had the data, the indicators were there. Busch at some of the price points we're getting him at is just going underpriced every single week. And maybe that's a spoiler for things to come here for this week, but he's getting overlooked in my opinion.
I think you're spot on, Mark. And I kind of have him highlighted. And I know I mentioned last week, like, look, that there isn't a ton of data for RCR and some of the other things in that direction. But his driving history at a lot of these tracks, he's so good, right? I don't think people realize, spoiler, how many top 10s, for example, he's had at Phoenix, or how many top 10s he's had at Vegas, right? So I think you're right. And I think the fantasy books are continuing to hate on him. I think RCR has a reputation that is unfair among the books because they haven't been a top tier program or team, but they found speed last year. It was noticeable at the end of the year. Dillon's Richmond run, the crash not included, but he still put himself there. Kyle Busch at different times. Frankly, I mean, Austin Dillon this past week was a shock to a lot of people. Otherwise, we'd have higher ownership. None of us were overly shocked with Busch. I'm mad I didn't push that for a top 10 bet, for example. I think he was minus 105 or minus 110. So it would have been almost even money. Look, I hope they continue to underprice him, because if that's the case, Mark, then we'll be able to get hopefully some low ownership, because I think between the history of RCR, Kyle's history last year, and he didn't win a race. I think people are talking about, is he over the hill now? Has he lost his edge? I've been seeing stuff like that lately. I don't think personally that's the case at all. I do think the equipment had to catch up. I think they're getting there. I think you're right. Maybe a good contrarian play is Kyle Busch in the interim, at least until DK and FanDuel decide to catch up.
I mean, he was 14%. So it's not just the books discounting him, but even at the discount, he's also not getting used, tracking ownership. So it's I think that's part of the reason why the price isn't going up, because no one's buying, despite
kind of like Bowman
45-point finishes. So it's like, if he's sitting around 8,500 and going to get you 45 fantasy points every single week, I'll sign up for that because it's consistent.
Yeah, and you know what? The crazy thing is so far, when you look back at, we've had 4 races this year. No driver has gotten into 4 top 10 finishes throughout the first 4 races yet. There's only been 4 drivers that have gotten 3 top 10s in at least the first 4 races. Now, 2 of them are obvious: Christopher Bell and William Byron.
Right.
The other 2 are not as obvious. One of them being who we just discussed, Kyle Busch, and the other being another one who's been quietly flying under the radar too, Chris Buescher.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, snap.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. He's outperforming his boss man consistently, for the record.
This might be the takeaway of the night here. That stat that you just rolled out. So I might find both of those guys in my lineups this week.
I tell you what, I'm nervous about Buescher this week. I'm not going to lie. I am nervous about Buescher this week. Look, I love betting drivers on their home tracks. I know Clint Boyer struggled at Kansas, but Kyle and Kurt always took pride in running Vegas here. We used to see Kyle always run the truck or the Xfinity car when we came to Vegas too. So, I don't know if I can get there with Buescher this week. Like, I specifically have Buescher concerns, but Kyle is the one that I'm like, there's not a ton of data that really has me wanting to go all in. The speeds, we're getting there, but we're not with JGR and Hendrick yet. Like, it's just not quite there yet.
Nope.
But boy, consistent top 10s go a long way in NASCAR, man. I mean, that's when you start getting consistent top 5s comes after that. And once you're into that window, now you are in that tier with those guys. And now we can start talking about where do we really want to place our bets for some wins. I think you're right, Mark. I think it's just like Suarez. It's just like Chastain. Some of these things the shoe's eventually going to drop on the other side. You can't keep having the bad luck, and not come the other way. And really, Bubba Wallace is there too. Shout out to Bubba Wallace. He was running very, very well in that Phoenix race. And I want to give him a hat tip because I bust his chops all the time for what he said and how he handled himself in the interview. He basically said, it's a bummer. No reason to get mad about it. We were running well. The brakes went away. It kind of happened last minute. It is what it is. Thank you, Bubba. You do that, you're going to have plenty of fans cheering for you and not booing for you. And gosh darn it, we're all looking forward to seeing the 23 back in victory lane.
There you go. I guess we could put a cap on that because we got other stuff we got to cover here. We got a few topics that are kind of interesting that came up this week. First of all, transitioning to news, that's what I'm doing. We got ourselves here that Prime Video have unveiled the rest of their NASCAR broadcast team for this year now. So Prime's going to be taking over in May, starting around the Coke 600 time. And basically, they're going to have a slate of 5 races, and then it's going to transition right into TNT. I believe a lot of the media personnel that is going to be with Prime is also going to be with TNT as well. So in case you guys didn't see who it is going to be on there, I have a fancy little graphic put together. So check it out.
Oh, Marty Snyder's back, huh? Kim Kuhn is back. Daniel Trotta. These are some names of blast from the past here. Dale Jr. and Steve Letarte. Look at that. I tell you what, Trevor Bain is a pit reporter. I'm looking forward to that. Regan Smith has done a great job with it. Parker Kligerman had done a great job with it in the past. And I'm a Carl Edwards fan, so I'm really excited about that myself.
Yeah, so just to explain a few things here about this, the pre-race and post-race coverage there, like how Fox does like the little pre-race thing there with Chris Myers and Jamie McMurray, that's going to be the Danielle Trotta and the Carl Edwards roles right there. Now, in the booth is going to be Adam Alexander, Dale Jr., and Steve Letarte, and then you see there the other 3 are just going to be reporting in the pits. So there you go.
Good deal, man. Good deal. Well, look, I hate streaming, but I got to admit, Prime did a great job with the cast they put together for Thursday Night Football. I don't hate this cast they put together. No offense, Adam Alexander. I'd rather have Alan Bestwick, but that's just me.
I also would rather have Bestwick in there too, but if we can't get Bestwick, I mean, Adam Alexander's not a bad fit either, especially with how he's been able to really show chemistry with just about almost anybody he's been working with too.
He does an excellent job of reining in Junior, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then Junior and Letarte there, they already got that chemistry from working in NBC together, so there you go. Mark, what do you think here?
Dale Earnhardt Jr., Carl Edwards are the 2 names that stick out to me. So I don't really have any kind of bias one way or the other as far as the broadcast goes. I just hope they give us a good one. follow the right things. I just want to hear what's going on the track. I don't need the stories here and there. I'll listen to that pregame and postgame and maybe during the commercial breaks. So just give me the race and give me the good stuff.
All right.
Sean, is Adam Alexander, is he on CW?
Yeah, he's the lead CW play-by-play guy for the whole year. So
I will say the CW broadcasts, in my opinion, have not been as good as the Cup this year. For if that's worth anything, but
I don't disagree.
I was gonna say both of them have their pros and cons. I feel like overall the booth has been better with the CW, in my opinion, than Fox has this year. But overall, though, I feel like CW has had a lot of accessibility issues that I keep seeing people complain about that Fox doesn't have. So
yeah, I just think it just drives me crazy when you see like 3 guys in the Xfinity race all of a sudden fall in the back and there's no explanation to it. Like Cup, it might take them 2 minutes to get there and they need to finish whatever the hell they're talking about. But the CW just straight up ignores it, and we have to look it up online or on X or something like that.
Not that Fox has had their MacGuffins of their own, too.
Oh, yeah. They're not perfect. They're not perfect, no.
So I'm pretty hardcore on the TV people, and I have been. Like, I've noticed significant shifts. Sean and I have talked about it. Fox has done a poor job with TV coverage in general. We talked about the lack of going through the field, the lack of showing what started accidents, the lack of the replay at the end of the race. I thought on Sunday I was kind of shocked considering how crazy the end of the race was. I felt like on Saturday they replayed it like 5, 6, 7, 8 times probably in that first 10 minutes post race. I didn't feel like we got that on Sunday because I went out for the dogs, missed, and I never actually saw the nose to nose, the camera shot, all that, and I had it on for an extra 15 minutes. I'm not the biggest Adam Alexander guy. I am partial to Mike Joy. I'm probably biased in that. I like the knowledge that Mike Joy brings from Barrett Jackson auctions, his overall car knowledge, his overall racing knowledge, covering other sports in NASCAR. I am very partial to Mike Joy. When people come after him, I get very, very offended, I guess. I don't know. I'm ready to fight people. Like, if Mike Joy was standing next to me, you start talking smack about him, I punch you. Like, I really do genuinely cherish his takes. I don't know what it is. Junior in the booth has never been a big thing for me. I love Junior. I think he is better for the sport not being in the race car. I don't think he's that great in the booth. Joey Logano pains me to say this. Joey Logano is phenomenal in the booth. I love it when it's Joey Logano and Kevin Harvick. I love Boyer. I'm burnt on him. Him and Steve Letarte, I want a crew chief involved, but for some reason I still prefer Larry Mack to Letarte. But I love the fact that it's a driver and a crew chief in the booth. I think that does matter. And as a fan, having those two people with two different aspects or lines of sight to the racing is significant and helpful. So I do love that. What are you going to do when you have your broadcast on 6 channels? You know what I mean? Like, there's only so many groups and people you can pull from. I'm kind of bummed, though, Sean, that all we're going to get is pre-race with Carl Edwards. Like, I was hoping we'd get a little free lipping from him like we do Kevin Harvick in the middle of the race.
Well, Harvick's in the Fox booth right now. He's there with Boyer and Mike Joy. I do agree that I think Mike Joy is still the best part of those broadcasts, in my opinion. I mean, really, Harvick, he has good information, but he just doesn't have like the right tone yet, in my opinion. Like, he's not quite there yet for me. And then Boyer sometimes, I mean, Boyer, you gotta like his enthusiasm, but at times it's too much. At times he just needs to rein it in. Yes. I think back even towards the last race at Phoenix this past weekend there, when really I was like saying in my head, Boyer, you should quiet down and let Mike Joy call the last lap. Damn it.
my beef is Junior, Jeff Burton, and Clint Boyer. They all remind me the same, and I feel like they're yelling and screaming as the race is going on. And in all fairness to them, they're all former drivers. They've been fans of the sport. So I can get the excitement, and I'm with you. I enjoy some of that enthusiasm. But there is something about the way Mike Joy professionally, and honestly, people don't like Jamie Little. I think Jamie Little's done a great job. She was a phenomenal pit reporter. She is still kind of honing her or figuring her own way through the booth, but I think she does a good job. But Mike calls it so well, and then you, like you said, you get Boyer over the top. And I think Junior does the same thing, which is why I'm like, I would rather have Junior do pre-race and let's get Carl in the booth. I think Carl would be he was always one of the best in-car interviews. He was the first guy to flip up the visor on the in-car interview so you could see his eyes. Like, that's just the way his mind works, you know? So, we probably talked way too much about people talking about the race when we've got a race coming up and we got, 2 more news things you probably want to hit, Sean?
Yeah, but we can hit these very, very quickly here. So let's go through the next one there. This one is basically NASCAR tweaking the open exemption provisional rules. So basically the TLDR, too long didn't read, in case those that don't know what that acronym is.
I didn't know what that was.
So basically, what NASCAR is tweaking is that all races that use the open exemption provisional will now automatically be 41 car fields. This is a change from before where basically if the open exemption driver ended up qualifying in regularly, then it'd just be a 40 car field. But now, no matter what, it's a 41 car field. So as long as it's used.
Don't worry, Mark. It's more fluff than anything else. The rule just makes more sense now. So
it's tightening up one small aspect. I think that was a good thing.
Yeah. Back in the day, the provisionals were always their own spot. So I'd never understood why they're like, well, if we have enough. NASCAR just tries to get too cute with these rules. Someone needs to teach KISS to NASCAR management. Keep it simple, stupid. They really, really do not understand that concept at all. I think in their mind, it's, hey, if we make it as complicated as possible, we'll trick the crew chiefs. Not realizing the crew chiefs are probably smarter than them and will spend all waking hours and sleeping nights figuring out ways around the rules. So keep it simple is what I would do, but I digress.
I don't know. I still want to see the duels every week. I mean, that's a whole betting market, man. You could bet on those. And they're like mini races within the race before the race even happens. And then you get all the degenerates throughout the week on the weeknights getting in on the action. So it's kind of like watching some MAC football, right?
We need to get
those late November MAC games.
We need to get Mark to a dirt track then. He would love that shit.
Oh, he'd be all for it.
Well, because it's real common in short track, dirt track, regional racing. You have qualifying, you have heat races, you have a B main, and you have an A main. That's kind of the small version of it. When you hear guys talk about the alphabet soup when they go to the Chili Bowl, well, that's because we have A through E or D or G mains and last chance qualifiers because there's 2,000 entries or something. But honestly, Mark, what you hit on, I would much rather see heat races than the stages. Like, to your point, why don't we run a duel? We run 2 duels, a stage, 2 heat races, set the field, and then instead of having these long last stage or whatever, we get rid of that, and the last stage is the race. Like, I would prefer to see something like that.
Yeah, because really the next time we're going to get anything even remotely close to that is when we hit to the All-Star race or All-Star weekend.
Yeah, with the showdown. And even that's not anywhere near as fun as the duels. There is some, to be fair, Mark, growing up, the duels were my favorite races of the year. Every year.
It's just a sprint, and it's just a short, it's a preview. And you get you get to pull a lot from that for the actual race. It just, I don't know. For me, again, it's a betting market. That DraftKings posted odds on those races. Right. You had DFS contests for the duels. So it's just another opportunity for people to throw down some money on.
You hear that, NASCAR? Mark wants more betting opportunities.
He's our casual fan. He's the guy you're recruiting. Do what he says.
Yes.
You don't want to listen to me. You're trying to get me out of the sport. But listen to Mark.
Because when there's no football in late February, early March, like, people want something to place money on a Wednesday night, and there's not always that premium college basketball game happening. So give me some NASCAR.
I'm just gonna say the one thing that I miss NASCAR doing during the COVID year in 2020 was then doing midweek races, because that was fun.
That was kind of, it sucked to go to the track and be fans in the area, because you couldn't go to the track and go to work the next day. You're not getting out of the track till 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. But for us fans, I'm not gonna lie, or us TV fans, I'm not gonna lie. There, to Mark's point, there's not going on. So to sit down and I'm with them. Let's make them the short sprint races. Let's make it like the truck race where we're in and out in under 2 hours, right? I mean, maybe that's where they're missing the boat. Why don't we run trucks on Wednesdays? Now, I know why they don't, because they overlap with the teams and money. But I tell you what, there'd be something to it. Quit putting the trucks on Friday night. Let's put them on Wednesday night.
Yeah, there you go. But, speaking of, okay, I'm just going to say it. I don't have a good way to segue to this next thing, but you added this item here, Rich, so let's cover it real quick here. So you found a quote from Chase Briscoe about how drivers used to feel invincible in the old car and don't in the new one. Elaborate for us here on the Thunder Hour.
So what happened was I found an article that was talking to Connor Zilic, and they were talking to him because he was a rookie, but he ran the Xfinity car and he ran the Cup car. And he talked about the challenges of driving the Cup car and some of the things that went with it. The tire maneuverability, how it banged and all that sort of stuff. And somewhere the author or somebody talked to Chase Briscoe because they talked about the safety of the car and all that. And Chase Briscoe said, look, we used to feel invincible in the old car. I know NASCAR is doing everything they can from a safety standpoint and upgrades, but we're not there yet with this car. And I think what he was hinting at was some of the moves and places that the drivers place the car and what they do with it. I wanted to highlight it because I've been the broken record for 2 years now, Sean, complaining that NASCAR is not open about the fact that this car is not nearly as safe. And that I have heard off the record from teams, drivers, crew members, officials that have all said the same thing. And now it's like, right there, NASCAR. In fact, my one buddy at work's like, poor Chase Briscoe, he's going to have a target on his back for NASCAR. He goes, at first they got the lawsuit overturned, and now they're going to turn around and he's going to say this. I said, for me, all it was validity, because I got tired of people telling me I don't know what the F I'm talking about. Chase Briscoe said it for me, so I don't know what to tell y'all. Not you two, just in general.
Well, I mean, this is just justification for your points. I figured that's why you put it on there. You're like, see, yeah.
Told you. Get off my lawn.
I mean, I will say between his car going up in the air like that and then also being in between the two other cars, like I feel like in that scenario, your car shouldn't be in midair. Like it just felt like it's so I don't know, light. I don't get it.
Let me ask you something, Mark.
You just fly up in there and in between two cars.
These cars have a flat bottom, kind of like a Matchbox car. Literally, I mean, it looks very similar to a Matchbox car. Okay, you've ever looked underneath your car or any other race cars? That is never the case. There's all sorts of cubby holes from where the tranny's at, and this is at, and that is at, and everything else. These cars is not that way. Okay, my one buddy asked me. He goes, "How much sense does it make? We're having a problem with these cars getting airborne. How much sense does it make to have a flat piece of metal on the bottom of those cars?" He goes, "If I stick my hand out the window when driving down the highway, what happens?" I said, "Well, it's like an airplane. You get lift, obviously." He goes, "So why are we doing that with the race car?" I said, "I don't know. I also don't know why these cars are so rigid. There are a lot of things I don't think NASCAR, and I don't understand, because I got to believe the scientists and the engineers and the folks that worked on these cars, they know more of this stuff than I do. I know, yes, I took AP chemistry and calculus and physics and all that. So I did pretty good in my own back in the day, but I'm not a PhD. And I'm going, none of this makes sense. You've made these cars so rigid that the stopping point hurts more, and you're trying to deny it. We hear it on the radio. I've listened to the radio for years. Sean, we never used to hear on a regular, every time there's a big hit today, it's the same thing. Hey, are you all right? Talk to me. Are you okay in there? And there's always a long pause, and then I'm good. That one hurt. On the old car, 1 in 5, 1 in 10 conversations were like that. Now we're at 5 out of 5, 6 out of 6. And I'm tired of being insulted that don't trust my lying eyes and ears. You know what I mean? So It doesn't make sense, Mark. They have a major problem with these cars getting airborne, and their solution up to this point was, we're just going to slow them down. Well, I hate to break it to you. Stick your hand out a window at 150 mile an hour and let me know what it does.
Yeah.
But you know what? How about we transition out of how unsafe the cars get, and well, I guess we're gonna try to go to more unsafe conditions here because we got a race on our hands. We got Las Vegas here, so it's the land of rolling the dice, making bets, trying to make
City,
money.
baby.
We got ourselves Las Vegas here, so. Regarding the strategy for this week's race, it's very simple. You're going to want to get your dominators in where you can get them there, and then you're going to want to look for place differential where you can find it. Some drivers are bound to move up through the field, especially if we get anybody that ends up having a bad qualifying day. And then you want to just try to get some drivers that'll get you some nice, decent finishing positions where you can find it there. And so I think what's really going to be interesting is seeing the mid-tier and value drivers, I think, is where we're going to have to really try to get different, because usually on these types of tracks, you usually have just a few favorites that everybody's going to be wanting to use that are going to dominate the race. And then the mid-tier and value picks, that can be anybody's guess right there, depending on how the circumstances and pre-race events go.
Yeah, I think heroes and zeros, definitely the premium type of build that I'm looking for here, because you're going to get your dominators. You know, a track like this, I felt like I saw it last week, but Austin Dillon starting 21st and finishing 12th, not necessarily the same exact track, but, you know, we might be able to see something similar where you can get a sub 6K guy that starts around the 22nd position. And if he can break into the top 15, here's the thing, you're probably going to get, I mean, how many cars on the lead lap by the end of this race? 15, 17? Where do you think we stand on that front? Up, high, more? 20?
So for the preview for this week, I looked up a couple of things I wanted to share with you guys. Okay. 1, 4 out of the last 6 Vegas races, so all with the next gen car, 6 races. 4 of the last 6, we've had at least one driver lead 100 or more laps. The minimum being 133 laps, the most being 181 laps. The 2 racers prior to that, which was the first 2 races at Vegas on the new car, nobody led 100 laps. The most anybody led, I think, was 80 something. Okay. If you go back to last year's spring race, last year's spring race, only 1 car crashed out, and 32 cars finished on the lead lap. If you go to the fall race, 3 cars crashed out in 20, I think it was 21 or 23 cars finished on the lead lap. So I would strongly suspect, now here's the other number I found. At last year's spring race, I didn't check the fall, but at last year's spring race, 8 drivers moved up 10 positions or more, including 2 in the top 5, or I'm sorry, 2 in the top 10 that moved up 20 positions or more. So here's the challenge, in my opinion. We have to hit on the dominator. The problem is, I don't know the easy calls, if you will, in the dominator. Everybody's going to be on, even at the high price points. Okay. Christopher Bell led the most laps in the fall race, but finished second. The previous 3 races, the most laps led were the same one that won the race. It was William Byron or Kyle Larson, depending on which year you look at. Other than that, though, the lap leader has typically been the guy to win the race. Christopher Bell was second. So we have to hit on that driver, whoever it is. Whether it's Byron, whether it's Larson, whether it's Bell, whether it's Reddick, Denny Hamlin, maybe. I mean, the Vegas books are going to tell you the top 4 are Bell, Larson, Byron, and Logano, I think.
Reddick.
Was the 4th one. Reddick. It was Reddick. Okay. Logano was right after that. So the problem we have, in my opinion, and I wanted to ask your guys' opinion, do we build a lineup with one of those? Do we build, say, 3 lineups with one of those guys banking on it? Or do we build 3 different lineups, each one taking a shot at a different dominator?
I'll let Mark start off with this one.
Yeah, I think that's probably the $1 million question, right?
Right.
For me, I think it's going to be Larson. I think Larson gets your lead laps, right? I mean, he has the most lead laps at Vegas out of the entire field right now amongst active drivers in the next gen car. So he's looked good. I think you need to take your gut shot on one of those guys. I think you can't put it into multiple builds. And here's the thing. This is NASCAR DFS. We're playing tournaments. Pick your guys, stick to them. One trap that even I fall in frequently is I want to spread it out because I'm like, well, it's going to be one of these three guys. And so then I want to build three lineups. Well, what happens is, yeah, then you might place really high with your best lineup, but not high enough to get a huge return. And then the other two lineups don't cash because you didn't have that guy that's in the one lineup, and you end up losing money on the weekend. So for me, you just got to pick the guy that you trust that is in your gut within that top four, build it out from there, but take a stand.
I agree with that stance. Ultimately, overall, I think that's what I'm also going to do in my lineups, but I am going to raise one other point here that I think we have to watch, and it's that we have to pay attention to the qualifying conditions, especially because imagine what happens is we get one of those top guys, and then they end up qualifying outside of the top 10. But they clearly show they have a very fast car through practice, but just end up flubbing on their qualifying run. That's going to add a whole other wrinkle of strategy to this, because then maybe in a case like that, maybe you want to take two potential dominators into your lineup, one in order to lead early on, and then maybe when that other guy gets there and catches up, he'll start dominating, and then boom, you'll end up having the highest scoring lineup that way.
If NASCAR has its way, what we got at Vegas, not the last 2 years, but the two races prior, where we had 5-6 different drivers leading 50, 60, 70, 80 laps. That's what NASCAR really wants, right? And for DFS purposes, that makes it more interesting and fun, because if you don't get the guy that leads 150 laps, you're going to be not cashing. Like, to Mark's point, if you decide to, I'm going to, and I guess if you're willing to do that, then I would do it in 3 different tournaments, right, Mark? Either pick the guy and go elsewhere and take your shots. But I think I fall into that pitfall that you described, Mark, because I have a habit of cashing on a regular basis and losing money every week. Like, it is odd if I don't have at least a lineup or two that cashes, but I find myself constantly not even breaking even, but usually winning a half of what I put out there back, something like that, because I can't find. And I think part of my problem is I can't seem to figure out the best way to get the group I like. I'll always have, I can almost promise you, if I do 3-4 lineups, I'll guarantee you I'll have probably the highest place differential person and the highest point scorer person in Dominator. I can almost guarantee it, but I won't necessarily have them both in the same lineup. That's the pitfall that you're talking about, right?
Yeah. So you got to go with your gut instinct. The first guy, not the second guy or the third guy that all could potentially beat the first guy, but the first guy that you decided is the best option.
I'm torn here because I agree with you. Larson's the easy call, but I hate the consensus and I hate the easy call because they bite me. And then I look at Bell, the sheer odds of winning 4 races, like he's kind of due for some bad luck. So I'm really hesitant to go that route. Like, I'm trying to find, is there somebody that is on the cusp, right? That not everybody else is on, but some are, right? That's the guy I think I want to build around, because I'm very fearful of, I really hate being with the consensus, and I really hate going with the obvious. They rarely seem to work, and it may be recency bias, but it rarely seems to work out for me. One guy we haven't mentioned that kept coming up was Ross Chastain.
Yeah.
He is all over the place in the data. The data points to we talked about Ross Chastain's going to turn it around. Sean, I think this is the week, bro.
I think this is the week in order to prove what he's got, really, with that equipment and the driver's skill. And he's been pretty good at this track before in the past. But to your point about, hey, if I want to just not use the most obvious guy, but I also want to avoid the guy that's going to have bad luck, there are still some alternative choices there too. I mean, you can think about Tyler Reddick or William Byron, for example,
Byron's
who
the
I
one
think
that
are
comes to
belong
mind
in that conversation as well.
Agreed.
Yep.
I see Byron I might build to Byron because I feel like he is hot, just not as hot as Bell. And he's had success here. He led the most laps when he won here a couple years ago. See, that's kind of the angle I'm thinking. And to Mark, something else Mark has taught me, if you're going to score well in the tournaments, you got to have some contrarian things to make you different. I don't know that Byron's going to be nearly as high owned since his price point's so close to Larson and Bell that those two are. However, he's a little bit of a discount, and I think he can dominate as much as the next guy. And to your point, Sean, I don't think he's as obvious.
No, neither is Reddick, I'd say, too. And Reddick's actually had some pretty good history at this track as well.
One thing I will say, though, is the most success I've found in hitting in high-scoring tournaments in NASCAR specifically is when I eat the chalk at the top and I go contrarian at the bottom. And that build, other than Briscoe crashing last week, like if Briscoe didn't crash, my lineup was a point off from cashing with Briscoe crashing in my lineup. If he didn't, I probably would have won big money last week. So it was one play away, and I just got, screwed by an unfortunate event. But it's like Austin Dillon was 5%, Kyle Busch was 14%, and then the rest of my lineup was 35% and up owned. So you don't have to be completely out of whack to get the winning lineup either.
Oh yeah,
that's totally. The one thing I found. Sean, I've talked about this. When you go chalky, the accidents aren't as big of a deal because when 70% is on the same guy that wrecks out, you're not at a huge disadvantage, because what I found, those 30% that don't use the chalk, they're not using chalk anywhere. So the gains that 30% could make by not having, say, Kyle Larson or whoever it was, they're not making it. Because, Sean and I've talked about this. There have been multiple times I'm thinking I'm done, and I've had some of my best paying days because, I ate the chalk. We've said it over and over. Being chalky on 3-4 drivers is not a bad plan. It really isn't. The key, to Mark's point, your contrarian picks have to hit. If the contrarian picks don't hit, it doesn't matter if you do chalk or not. It really doesn't. If the two contrarian picks you use don't outperform their price or dollars, you don't have a chance.
The last point I'll make to all of this is, so you mentioned building 3 lineups. I love also sometimes the idea of just building one DFS lineup. And then if I do like other drivers or other guys, regardless of the sport, I'll actually go to a book, or I will go to Prize Picks. For example, Prize Picks, after qualifying, they will post number of fastest laps for a handful of drivers. Those sometimes have been money, especially there was unders that you were hitting left and right from Prize Picks the week of COTA. So it's one of those things where feel free to even hedge in a different way. Don't have your money work against you where you're submitting 3 lineups in the same exact tournament. And one lineup is directly working against the other and pushing the other one down your standings. Place a bet in a completely separate thing and diversify that way.
All right, so I'm going to end this with 2 more points here that I do have to mention. One is, again, following up on the qualifying point I made earlier. Sometimes the qualifying results are going to determine who the chalk is going to end up being. So you have to pay real close attention to that, especially because usually at these races, a lot of the chalky dominators start towards the very front of the field. We've seen it more often than not. And then the second point that I'm going to raise up has to do with betting. Do not be afraid in order to do live betting for a race like this, because on occasion we might get into different kinds of racing here where it might end up coming down to a late race restart where pit strategy comes into play, or fuel mileage can also come into play in that regard too. So if you're doing any betting on this race, sure, you can set your bets early up and on, but also be on the lookout in case there's any differing circumstances that might make it good in order to do some live bets as well.
I like hitting the live lines after a mistake is made. Say a pit road penalty, something like that. Sometimes the books are slow to update, but if they update after, say, Christopher Bell has a pit road penalty and starts back in 31st after a caution, they may not update the odds for a little while, but it's going to take him time to move up. And so all of a sudden he goes from plus 400 to plus 700. And now all of a sudden I'm much more enticed to make that bet.
Yeah, pay attention to live betting. This is a good track in order to do that with. But you know what? Speaking of the track, this is going to be our first race in a while where we're going to have a full slate of NASCAR. We got trucks, Xfinity, and Cup. Let's go through the open and part-timer list here. How about you read us off with the trucks here, Rich?
You got it. Appreciate the note on the team, Sean. Big help, buddy. William Sawalwich, number 1 Tricon truck. You guys know I love Tricon, so don't be sleeping on Sawalwich again. Stephen I said it 4 times correctly today. Malozzi. He's driving for the Rome Brothers, number 2. Justin Haley, that is the guy I am watching for. He's in the 07 Spire truck. That had been driven by Michael McDowell earlier this year. Corey Day is in the 7 Spire truck. That's the truck Kyle Busch took to victory lane a couple weeks ago. Josh Rome is in his own truck. He's in the 22. Luke Finhouse is in the 66 Thor Sport. Don't sleep on Luke Finhouse. Justin Carroll's in the 90 Terrell Carroll Motorsports machine.
Yep. And for the Xfinity Series, we have Patrick Emmerling in the 07 for SS Greenlight Racing. We have Garrett Smithley back in the number 14 for SS Greenlight Racing. Eric Almirola is back in the number 19 for Joe Gibbs Racing. Austin Green is making another start on an oval for Jordan Anderson Racing in the 32. Greg Van Alst is expected to be in the 35 for Joey Gase Motorsports. Mason Massey is in the number 45 for Alpha Prime Racing. Joey Gase himself is in his own car, the number 53 this week. Leland Honeyman Jr. is back in the number 70 for Cope Family Motorsports. And then Dawson Cram is in the number 74 for Mike Harmon Racing this week. And well, this is a first that I have not seen in a while, but there's no open or part-timer teams for Cup this week.
I thought the cheap car was going to make that more possible. We'd see a bunch more. Weird. Sorry.
I think this might be the first time since we went to the next gen car that this has happened, where it's only chartered entries.
I went back and looked. So it's been common the last couple of years to only have 36 cars and a couple of Vegas races, a couple of tracks. It's weird. You go through, if you look at the list of from year to year, if you go to Racing Reference, it'll show you cars entered, and you can kind of see an interesting pattern as this season goes on. It wanes, and then at the end of the year, it comes back up a little bit. It's very odd. And it's Stephen Malozzi. I don't know why I couldn't pronounce his name properly. He's a solid little driver, too. So, my apologies.
There you go. But what else is solid is going over to fantasyguru.com. You can still get the MVP package. We're having our flash sale, but the price is almost going to be gone for that $79.99. So you want to get into it now, and you'll be locked in for the whole year with all the sports, with the exception of MLB and NFL coverage. So Fantasy Guru has a lot for you to offer. Get in with those packages right now. You can get the MLB draft guide now at Fantasy Guru. And also you can get the franchise mode package for NFL as well with the NFL draft in order to get our NFL draft coverage that way too. You can find that also on fantasyguru.com. Hit up support at fantasyguru.com in order to get the best possible deal. They'll help you out, comp you, whatever you need in order to help you start winning big and think like the gurus out here. We're gurus too.
Winners win.
Winners win.
Winners win.
Now, how about we help the winners win now? We get right towards our picks to watch here. Let's break down the field, guys. Top price picks to watch. So starting off here, I have Kyle Larson on my list. Then I have Tyler Reddick and William Byron. And because I have to mention a driver that's not in that 10K range, I'm also going to throw Kyle Busch in there too, because I think we got to also talk about Kyle with how consistent he's been this season. Home race for him too. And the 8 car could be one to watch this week, I think.
So I got to give a hat tip to you guys, because I'm usually the guy pushing Kyle Busch all over the place, and I'm the only guy that didn't mention Kyle Busch. Sorry, didn't mean to be a spoiler for you, Mark. I'm just shocked. So now I'm reevaluating. You guys realize that means Busch is going to do really well since I don't have him listed and you guys do, right? Like that's just Murphy's Law. He's
been doing well all year almost, though. So
yeah, but he's come up short of my expectations, right? You see what I'm saying? Like I thought I had him for a win somewhere. I'm waiting. Kyle Busch is going to go on a tear. I'm convinced of it. I want to see a little more speed from RCR.
I think, like you said, he's getting there. The equipment's starting to slowly catch up, and I think those personnel changes that RCR has made since the offseason are finally starting to bear a little bit of fruit, perhaps. So there you go.
I agree. So my group is Kyle Larson for 10.5, William Byron at 10,000, and Denny Hamlin at 9,700. Hamlin has an incredible driver history at this track that I don't think many people realize, and at 9,700, he's quite the steal. I have no problem anyone going Bell. I'm nervous, guys. I'm really struggling with the 4 in a row.
Totally understandable, especially because there's been a couple of close calls with drivers missing out on 4 in a row, and the last time it's happened was 2007. So that right there should speak of how hard it is to even do something like that.
Yeah, I got Larson, Byron, Bell, and Busch. So no big surprises here. I think Byron, I mean, he's got a race that he already won here. He's got 3 top 5s. He's third in the field in laps led in the next gen car, only up to Kyle Larson. So like we were talking about before, I think Byron is he might be a little bit more of an under the radar type of dominator here. Busch, I mean, here's the thing about Busch. It's like if you get him in the 15th position and he finishes 7th, you're good at his price point. And that gives you enough wiggle room to squeeze in 2 10K dominators here. So that's why I have to include him. And he's got a good track record. I mean, he's close to a 50% clip when it comes to landing in the top 10s on intermediate tracks. He's also about a 20% clip to land in the top 5. So all in the net car here over the last 3 years. So for me, I think Kyle Busch is the top play. And I personally am going to take a stand with Kyle Larson as my lap leader and main dominator.
I think we all have Kyle Larson penciled in that kind of role this week. We all started off with him on our list. So yeah.
He's plus 500 for most laps or most fastest laps for what it's worth, Mark.
Larson.
Yep. Plus 500 on DK. DK's actually got some fun social bets this week, I saw.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, be on the lookout for all of these creative types of bets. Look on books for bets that, like you said, for fastest laps, number of laps led, like we see on Prize Picks, as I was talking about before, because that stuff can give you some free plays in and of itself, especially after qualifying. It's like you'll see like Kyle Larson and his over-under prop for laps led will be 112, and then Christopher Bell's will be like 60. And it's like, well, they're pulling something from somewhere now that qualifying's over that has a huge gap between the two when it comes to laps led. What does Prize Picks know, or what does Vegas know?
Right.
All right, let's get into our mid-tier drivers to watch. This is where we start to get a little bit more interesting with our picks. So starting off, I have Ross Chastain, Alex Bowman, and a driver that you guys say you have concerns about, Chris Buescher. I think Chris Buescher can be a bit of a sneaky one this week in order to watch. So really, he's had some solid finishes overall here.
Yeah, it was just I was having a hard time finding his name in the top 10 enough.
Yeah,
for my liking. There's a lot of guys that weren't. So, and there's nothing wrong with Buescher. He's off to a good start. For some reason, he's just one of those guys I'm just a little twisted about this week.
I think that's like a where does he qualify type of play, because if we see him in like the 25th position, then I'd
be all in. Yeah, say I'm all in.
Yeah.
If he qualifies 7th, I don't know. That's going to be a little rich for my blood.
Yeah, well, I really do think that Buescher, he's going to be one to watch overall, especially when you look back towards He ended up qualifying 22nd and finishing 10th in last fall's race at this track overall. And he's had his fair share of finishing in the top 20, 4 out of the 6 races with the next-gen car. So really, I think that could be a driver in order to watch, especially when he's off to as consistent of a start that he's having. And I think the ownership is not going to be that high on him, too.
That's fair.
That's my other angle.
And you know me, Sean, I do like the momentum. He's one that I just can't get there with. One that I'm kind of the opposite with is Chase Briscoe. And it's not so much Chase Briscoe's history, it's Martin Truex's history. I understand it's not the same driver, but it's the same car. And I think the Vegas books are the same way because they got Chase Briscoe listed as the top 10 at -105, which seems a little aggressive to me. But I got to tell you, Sean, Martin Truex in that car was really consistent. That was something I noticed with him and Denny Hamlin. Both of them were that way. And honestly, Kyle Busch, too, who raced with JGR for the longest time. So it's a little high priced, but I want to see Briscoe in practice. That's more of, I think Briscoe's going to shock some people this week type of thing. The odds don't seem to make sense to the money. Ross Chastain has been incredible here. So Sean's got him listed first. I'm with Sean, and I'm also on Alex Bowman. I do want to give honorable mention to Bubba Wallace. I think he can put together a decent run here, and he is cheap at 7,800.
Not a bad call out there. I actually don't mind the Wallace call as well. So, yeah. Mark, what do you got?
Well, I've got Wallace as well, and I've got Chastain, Bowman, and Suarez. So, oh man. So Suarez at $7,100. Like, look, there's more data out there again to support Daniel Suarez. He's been running well. Like, I know he's wrecking every single race. It's 3 races in a row, but at some point, Daniel Suarez has to finish a race. And when he's out there, he's moving up the field almost every single week. So give me Daniel Suarez at $7,100 because there's going to be a lot of people that don't want to play him because of how many times they've got burnt. And I'm just gonna plant my foot in the ground and hopefully Daniel Suarez turns it around at some point here. Bubba Wallace, I'm also on board with. I think, especially with his intermediate track record, he can do some damage here. And he's been racing well, as Rich mentioned. So I'm a big fan of that one. I think that's also going to be a pretty low-owned type of play. And then we already talked about Ross Chastain earlier, but Ross Chastain, I mean, another guy that, this type of track can really make some noise. Alex Bowman, both $8,300, 8,000, fine plays, great plays to build out your lineup. The only issue I have with those two, and even Bubba Wallace, is I'm finding myself having a hard time squeezing in a mid-tier guy. I normally have to get down to a 7, 6K, and 5K type of guy so that I can squeeze in my dominators for this setup. So that actually brings me to a great point, is find a contrarian way to squeeze in one of these $8,000 guys. Maybe leave $1,000 on the table, and you could be looking at a pretty contrarian type of lineup there.
Yeah, you could probably use some 5K guys in order to help build that gap up. And to be fair, I think there are some pretty decent choices at that range this week overall. It's like you put one of those 5K guys in, and then you could have just enough in order to squeeze Suarez in, no problem there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got a few of those options, I think.
Well, we overlap on the value and sleeper guys. I don't know if you noticed this, but we overlap a lot. Go ahead, Sean.
All right, so I'll start us off then. We got the other hometown guy here. Well, one of the hometown guys. There's 3 in this weekend's Cup race. Noah Gragson is leading it off for me there, too. I love Gragson a lot. Hometown race for him. He's ran very well in the Xfinity Series at this track. He's had some decent runs in the Cup Series at this track. And he's with that Front Row Motorsports equipment. So that equipment could, at the very least, carry him, I think, to a top 15 finish if the circumstances go right. Justin Haley is next in line for me. He's another driver that's actually had some pretty decent history at this track. He's scored positive place differential a couple of times. And then my sub 6K play, under 6K on DraftKings, John Hunter Nemechek. really, I think Nemechek is a really underrated driver if you look at the stats at this particular track. And overall, I just think that he's also been quietly having a pretty decent start to the year, so he can ride that momentum down. And he's also riding with the Backstreet Boys, in case you didn't see the paint scheme to his car this week. So, hey, tell me why? Well, I want to use John Hunter this week.
My lord. TNF that I'm on Noah Gragson. I actually think Gregson's potentially a top 10. I think that's doable for him. It is a bit of a long shot. We'll talk about that later. I'm with you on Justin Haley 100%. I didn't specifically target someone under 6,000. I think Dinger is going to be contrarian, and he has had quite decent runs here, including with place differential and decent finishes. I happen to love the John Hunter Nemechek pick. I will be honest, Sean, it was one of those names I kept coming to, but I couldn't find the data to get me there. You know what that usually means? They're either wreck or they're going to have a heck of a day. So I kind of want to add John Nemechek to my list because I agree with you on all points on John Hunter Nemechek. I still say SVG can be a sneaky little play contrarian. By the end of the season on the ovals, folks, SVG is going to be showing up on the leaderboard. I'm convinced of it.
All right. I think SVG it's going to be qualifying dependent for me in order to
100%.
use him this week. But I think that the potential is there if he qualifies in the 30s. But hey, Mark, go on ahead. Tell us why you want your value picks that way.
Well, I got Gragson and Haley for some of the reasons you all just mentioned, but I'm in the same boat as you with John Hunter Nemechek at $5,500. This allows us to pay up. This is also a driver who, yes, there might be not as much cup data on, but we've seen plenty of success here in Xfinity. So I like John Hunter Nemechek, especially. So like I was talking about before, Austin Dillon last week went from that 21st position to 12th under 6K. I would not be surprised if we saw a guy like Nemechek go from like 23rd to 15th or something along those lines. At that price point, that is going to be gold. So I'm on it for some of those reasons from a roster construction standpoint and for some of the Xfinity background. And then Eric Jones, threw him in there a little bit different, but a guy that's hitting on a 50% clip in intermediate tracks in the Cup Series in the next gen car. So top 20. So if we can get him maybe a starting position of roughly around 28th, 29th, 20th, 30th, something like that, and he moves up into, the 20th position or the 19th, something along those lines, I'm a big fan of that as well at $6,300. So I think you have to get at least one driver under 6K. And for that reason is why I'm squeezing John Hunter Nemechek into my core 4.
I do like the Eric Jones call. It was another name I kept kind of floating around, Mark. So I really kind of dig that. Sean, why don't you hit us with your core 4, man?
All right, let's get on into it. DFS core 4 here. I have Ross Chastain on DraftKings at 8,300 and 9,500 on FanDuel. Alex Bowman at a flat 8K on DraftKings and a flat 9K on FanDuel. Noah Gragson at 6,900 and 6,000 on FanDuel there. For DraftKings only, I'm going to put Kyle Larson into my core at 10,500. Larson, we've talked about him to death on this show today. But hey, love him there. And as for FanDuel, I have William Byron over Larson for my core just because the price difference is a much bigger difference compared to DraftKings versus FanDuel there. You got Larson as the most expensive driver on FanDuel at a flat 14,000. Byron's only 12,500 there. Definitely quite a big difference. Makes it much easier in order to play around with options there.
I dig it. So my core 4, it's a lot of overlap. Give me Larson. We all seem to be on the Larson. I think that I will not be shocked if he's 60, 70% owned, especially if he qualifies in the top 5. I can't get away from Chastain the way his numbers are. I also really like Gragson. Now, my 4th one, if I can make it work, is William Byron. I would love to build a nice lineup with Larson, Chastain, Byron, even as a core 3, and if I have to figure out the rest. the fact that you guys are on John Hunter Nemechek, I'm digging it. I'm going to try to build a lineup this week then with Larson, Byron, and Chastain. If that means I have to get creative at the cheap spot, so be it. I'm definitely going for the hero zeros type of thing. And the reason I want to go that route, my gut feeling is those are the two guys that are going to be our lap leaders. And if I'm wrong, it's going to be Bell and Reddick. But like Mark said, pick your poison and hope for the best.
So I just plugged this in here real quick for you, Rich. But if you had Chastain, Larson, Byron, and Gregson, it leaves you with an average remaining of 7,150. So,
I could totally make that work then.
Yeah, you could throw slot Suarez in there too if you wanted to, and then that gets you basically Austin Cindric on down on DK,
which is quite a few options. Good call, Sean. Good call. So. Yeah, I guess my core four then is Larson, Chastain, Byron, and probably Gregson over Bowman, just to have the freedom to go get Bowman as a fifth guy and go elsewhere for the sixth guy. I'd be happy with that, to be honest.
And then if you stuck Bowman in there instead of Gregson, that leaves you with 6,600 average remaining. And then if you add Gregson, okay, if it was Chastain, Larson, Byron, Bowman, and Gregson, it leaves you with 6,300 remaining. So that's Eric Jones on down that you can fit in for your last one.
Right. Which isn't terrible. Again, John Hunter Nemechek being 5,500. Now all of a sudden that fourth or fifth guy, so to speak, or sixth guy, technically, I guess. Now you're approaching that middle 700 range.
Yeah. I put Larson, Chastain, Busch, and Nemechek in my core four. And I'm a big fan of both of your guys' core fours as well. If I fused my core four with Rich's, I can actually build a full lineup. I don't know. I might be giving away my lineup that I play on Sunday because I got Busch, Byron, Chastain, Gregson, Larson, and Nemechek. That's the lineup. Like I'm on board. Sign me up. I don't even know where these guys are going to qualify at, but
I was just say, damn it, Mark. That's the kind of lineup I like to cheer for, bro.
Yeah.
And he uses just enough salary in order to make that lineup. Just enough.
You know, that's the thing. You're maximizing it. But this would be the perfect lineup for like a 200-person tournament, going a little bit heavier spend and just going all in on one here.
Mark, I hate to say it, I'm going to do this lineup.
Let's tail it, man. That'd be fun if we just got a bunch of everyone in the Discord just to
We're
play.
We're going to have our own lineup trades. We're going to have our own NASCAR lineup trades that are hand built.
That would be fun. Hey, you know what? That is the most fun though. Is if everyone plays the same thing and the thing hits. We're gonna all have a blast. So,
should I throw it up on screen then?
I'm down. Yeah, let's do it.
Do it.
All right. Hold on 1 second, and I'll get that right up here. Boom, boom, boom.
While you're pulling it up, I'll just share my core four bets. I got Larson, Byron, Busch, and Chastain. So I'm taking all guys from that lineup. Larson's plus 400, Byron's plus 750, Busch is plus 1,600, and Chastain is plus 2,200. I like those last two the most.
I did save myself. I noticed I did mention Kyle Busch to win, so I wasn't completely out on him. I did actually put him in here, and I filled out my form before you guys did, so I know I didn't steal that from anybody. So I feel much better because I was like, I know I liked Busch somewhere. I used him as a longer shot, gut shot for a win at plus 1,600. So guys, we have a lot of overlap this week, which means one of two things. We are on it, or we're all about to look like a bunch of idiots. There's nothing in between with as much overlap as we have. I'm just saying. And look, I trust us. And I'm not going to joke. I'm going to use this lineup, and I'm going to count how many repeat lineups we have in the contest I'm in. And all I'm going to use that for is if there's a bunch of them, I'm going to feel good about our podcast.
I'm going to flash it up on screen since I have it up here. There you go.
Oh, get rid of my core betting there. There we go.
Yeah,
there we go. Love it.
Beautiful.
I love $0 left too.
Yes, exactly. Zero.
You know what's going to be funny though is we put this up here and we put it up before qualifying, and all 6 of the drivers qualify inside the top 20.
Yep.
You realize that's a high likelihood,
painful.
right? Yeah,
But you
I'm
know
telling
what?
you,
I
it
mean,
would
I
happen.
mean, the only problem with that is if that happens. So that's actually a good point to bring up. If that happens, I think the only guy that I would be concerned about is Gregson. I think Chastain and
That's fair.
Busch in the 8,000s are fine, and then Larson and Byron will, and those are going to be our guys that we need just the laps led anyways. So
Right.
the only guy that to me is problematic with would be Gregson if he qualifies at like the 10th position. That's
You
where I'm
sure
a
you
little
guys
nervous.
aren't going to be talking concerns about Nemechek qualifying that high?
Well, I think Mark's point though, Nemechek's price is so low that
Mhm.
even if he gets minus 10 points and let's say he starts 10th and he gets minus 10 points and finishes 20th, there's enough points there that the $5,500 still is better off than our other options at 5,500. At least
Yeah.
that's how I'm taking it. I don't know if that's off base because Mark has really shown me going ahead and gambling on some. Now, if he crashes, Sean, to your point, then yes, we're.
I think the window, the zone is like Nemechek anywhere from like if he's qualifying anywhere from like the 13th to like the 25th position, that's kind of the wheelhouse for where I want him to
Sure.
be.
Yeah.
So like if he qualifies at the 18th position, I'm good. I'm totally good. Maybe he qualifies at 18th and he finishes at 19th at $5,500, move on to the next space.
Right.
I'm fine with that. I was just saying if he ended up qualifying like around 11th or 10th or so, then I'd be a little concerned.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
and I think, to your point, Sean, I think at 5,500, it's worth the dice to go fishing for somebody in the back, right?
Yeah.
True. Very true.
So,
just wanted to make that clear now before I
Nope.
wrap up here with my core bets. Actually, let me just throw those out there too. My betting core 4, I have Kyle Larson at plus 400, Tyler Reddick at plus 650, William Byron at plus 750, and then I have Ross Chastain at 22-1 overall there.
His odds are off. I somehow missed them. His odds are off. Like, go bet that for a top 10 at plus 2,200. He's got to be what for a top 10? Minus 110 then?
Top 10 for Chastain, he's minus 115 as of us on the show right here.
God, I'd probably bet it though. I mean, the 2,200 is so crazy. That just seems so long. Like I would have had him closer to Kyle Busch's 1,600, but whatever. I dig it. And honestly, we got a whole bunch of overlap here. My core 4 bets plus 400 Larson. I like Byron a little bit more than Reddick at plus 750. Reddick at 650, kind of long shot-ish on Kyle Busch. I get Bell is due to win here, but gentlemen, at plus 400, those odds seem so low to me for a 4-timer.
Yeah, I totally get that. That's why I bring up the live betting angle, because you may want to take that with Bell, or just hope that he ends up having a very poor qualifying run that it'll make it deeper as a result. So there you go.
All right. Any other bets you guys? Sean, highlight your bet here because I think it's a very good bet.
Seriously, I think this one other prop that I found on DraftKings Sportsbook, Alex Bowman to finish in the top 10, plus 100. Having Bowman do top 10 at plus odds right there when you have other drivers that, such as like the aforementioned Ross Chastain, or you have Chase Briscoe even at minus 115. Really, I think Briscoe and Bowman should swap odds right here because Bowman's actually gotten some top 10 finishes.
I agree.
In recent years at Las Vegas. In fact, actually, you look at all the drivers that have plus odds for top 10 props at Las Vegas in the next gen car. Bowman has the most top 10s of all of them with 3.
Yeah, and the other ones don't hardly have any. In fact, the more I think about it, Sean, I would not bet Chase Briscoe at minus 115. I would bet Bowman at plus 100 instead. Don't go overboard on these top 10 bets because remember, there's only 10 spots. And 5 of them are probably be taken with drivers with minus 200, minus 300, minus 400 odds. So
yeah,
don't get greedy here.
And I was going to say, for those drivers, if you're really thinking about it, you may want to consider betting a top 5 on them.
Right. Something like that. Then you'll get some plus odds. It won't be much, but it'll be much better than minus 500, plus 200 or something. So I'm going to throw one bet out here, I guess 2. I think Bubba Wallace at plus 120. It's kind of risky. I think he's due, though, gentlemen. I really do. And I'm kind of on Noah Gragson. I don't know what it is, but I think Noah Gragson, the top 10 at plus 400. Maybe it pays to wait to see after qualifying, because if he qualifies well, I don't think his odds change. If he qualifies poorly, I think the odds go down and get a little longer. What do you guys think?
I think it's pretty plausible, especially when you think about it too. Gregson does have one top 10 finish, which he got in this race 1 year ago, starting 30th and going all the way up to the 6th position. And he's finished with positive place differential in 3 of his 4 Cup starts at this track. So,
and I think because the data is there, the payoff will be significantly less if he does qualify well.
And as far as qualifying positions are concerned, the best he's ever qualified at Las Vegas was 17th in his very first start at this track, which was just a substitute role for an injured Alex Bowman at Hendrick Motorsports. So that was even better equipment than what he has now, arguably.
Yes, and that was his first run. But I guess what that showed me, Sean, is he clearly can get around this track.
Very much so. And those Xfinity stats are no joke for Gragson.
No, they're not. They're not. And that's something that, we try to do as a team here, look at the trucks in Xfinity and try to use that as indicators. That's partly why Martin Truex's name and number, it's not in my article because he's not driving, but in all the number section, Truex would have been in every single one of those categories. It's hard for me to not think Briscoe could do something in that car then. That's where my angle on Briscoe has been this whole time. So, any other last second thoughts, bets?
Yeah, I got one. I got winning manufacturer Chevy plus 120. So this pretty much takes my core 4 bets of Larson, Byron, Busch, and Chastain and throws it into a winning manufacturer bet because I can, if any of those guys win the race, guess what? I also get top Chevy. So, or top manufacturer. So, plus I can get any of the other Chevys from the field. So, plus 120, giddy up because we got 4 guys under plus 1,000 to win the race within that group.
So, just one other point that actually adds towards Mark's little bet here for manufacturer. In the 6 races that we've had in the next gen car, 4 of the 6 have been won by Chevy drivers, and all 4. And that also includes all 3 of the March Las Vegas races, all won by Chevy.
I would say the Joey won 1 fall race, and the other
Joey
fall
won
race
2
was,
fall races.
Or 2 fall races. That's right. Joey won 2 fall races. So the other 2 were by Ford and Joey. Which
I'll take
we aren't talking. We didn't talk about Joey, but Joey should be. Maybe we had too much of a blind eye this week, but he's also on a guy that he's on a bad streak, and some of it's his own doing, and I don't know. Maybe it's karma from luckily winning a championship. I don't know.
Oh, hangover.
It's possible. It's an odd number year. You know what they say about Logano in odd number years. Right. He has a hangover or doesn't perform as he should. And then even numbered years, watch out.
Well, gentlemen, it's been fun. Any other parting words before we take off here?
Good luck to everybody out there playing. Be sure to hit us all up in Discord. We're all going to be doing content across this week. Now we got ourselves 3 NASCAR races to cover, so should be fun in order to see it here. Rich has trucks, Mark has Xfinity. I'll take care of Cup. There we go.
Well, good luck to everybody. On behalf of everyone at fantasyguru.com, please go over to fantasyguru.com, click the subscribe button, check out what packages we got. Don't see what you want, hit up email support at fantasyguru.com. On behalf of Sean Engel, you can find on X at SeanE247, and Mark Hogan you can find on X at DFS_Marlin. I am Rich Mileto. Do not follow me on Twitter. Y'all have a good one.